pretend that didn't happen.
Again?
Yeah, Monday Night Football. My name is Sam Meakin. I'm joined in the studio by Mikey Wilson, Craig Leach and Connor Heaney. And it's a Hibs special, so this will very much serve as the counterpoint to last week's show. Last week's show, admittedly, was very Hearts heavy. There were a few Jambo opinions expressed that we know some Hibbies took issue with, but that was very much the point of the show. It was to be a wee bit less guarded, a wee bit less neutral, and let the Jambos say what was on their mind after a pretty memorable 10-0 victory. This week, Hibs have had an equally important week. It builds on to what is going to be potentially a very, very memorable end to the season, so we're going to try and kind of immortalise that in podcast form. So let's go through that, guys. Firstly, we've got a controversial opening question from last week that we said we would roll over. We need, following on from the McMuffin incident, the alleged McMuffin incident, I still got stick. Even despite putting alleged in, I still got stick saying, did it actually happen? Well, that's what alleged means. Some people said it happened, some people said it didn't. Jason Cummings says it didn't, but is he a reliable witness? Who knows?
Plus, where's the fun in denying that it might have happened?
Exactly.
Come on, really?
I expected Cummings to embrace it wholeheartedly, to be honest. I expected his celebration at the weekend to run over and get a bag of McMuffins, start lobbing them in the crowd.
I was waiting for the Twitter selfie on the following weekend, just being a celebrated a muffin last night.
He's obviously not seen that Francesco Totti celebration yet, because Jason Cummings is definitely the guy when he eventually sees that on BT Sport, brilliant man, I've got my celebration. Right, okay, exactly. Right, let's go then. Connor, let's start with yourself.
Well, after listening to the show last week, I put my foot through my iPad and sent Radio Soul Tower the bill. I was so cross with you guys. So I'll throw a muffin at yourself and Scott and Sean for your brass Jambo behaviour. No, I mean, one person I would like to buy a McMuffin or a McDonald's breakfast for would be Derek Riordan. I think a few Hibs fans last week were a bit miffed at you guys having a go at him, because I feel like just now he's done something quite positive with his life. He signed for East Fife. I think he's also had a kid in the last week, so I think that's why maybe a few Hibees thought it was a bit uncalled for to single him out for some McMuffin abuse. I think let's face it, for the best part of sort of 5 years now, he's not really done anything wrong. You could argue that maybe his career hasn't quite gone to plan, but I think East Fife is a decent club to pay for. I think Gary Naismith's quite a good manager. If not a good manager, he's a strong personality, maybe the kind of guy that Derek needs around. So I think it's a positive move. It's quite a humble move, and there's not been much fanfare about it. He just wants to get back to playing football, and I was watching the highlights of his game against Elgin last week, and he pinged in I think it was 3 or 4 really good free kicks, one of which went in and 2 of them were converted, and it was quite nostalgic, I think, for any Hibs fans watching him. So good luck to you, Kath. I'll buy you breakfast anytime.
So had we chucked him a Happy Meal, we would have been alright, because we could have just said, well, it's a toy for the bear. Welcoming the new arrival.
But actually one person, and this is going back a few weeks now, but one thing that made me a wee bit angry recently was I don't have Sky or BT or anything like that, but I recently signed up to BT. It's online sports thing, and I watched the Celtic Inter game, the first round. Quite enjoyed it, and then after the game got Steve McManaman complaining about Celtic's defence is terrible because of the league they're in, and he clearly doesn't have a clue, because look at what's happened in the last fortnight. Aberdeen were still only sort of 6 points behind Celtic at the minute, and St Johnstone have beaten them yesterday. Dundee United pulled off a draw against them with sort of 9 men, and it's obviously some folk in England don't have a clue what's going on up here, which is to be expected. But I could just imagine all these Old Firm fans and Celtic fans sort of empty-headed, nodding along, going, it's true that we don't have enough competition. And that kind of thing annoys me. I think, as your good friend Derek Ray was saying a few weeks ago, we need more people to be sort of championing the Scottish game instead of putting it down. So that I would throw a McMuffin at him, or maybe a hot apple pie. Okay,
McManaman's getting it as well. Craig, who are you thinking?
I'll still stick with Chris Boyd.
Okay.
Or after looking at the game yesterday, because he rampages about and he looks swanged all the time, maybe Scott Brown would benefit for a wee McMuffin. It's no secret that he's not the cleverest laddie, so maybe it might, a wee McMuffin out of nowhere might draw a wee wry smile to his face and cheer him up.
Cheer him up. I think, does he not usually have Cocoa Pops for breakfast, Scott Brown? So maybe,
I know that Mowbray banned him for drinking Coke.
I'm sure he'd in the youth team banned for eating sweeties and stuff within a certain time of a game, or it was an absolute disaster.
Who's your victim then, Michael?
For me, I maybe take a more serious approach with this.
Schoolboy,
I should take this seriously. So I'm just going through the usual list of Jambo figures of hate's maybe strong, but certainly strong dislike. He went for Scatchell. It's probably based more on the fact that he was a really good footballer and always scored against us. Hartley was on the list, but mainly for the same reasons. In all fairness, he gets a bit of a hard deal of Hibs fans because he was just reacting to the abuse that he got from Hibs fans. So, like, kind of fair play to him, and he unfortunately stuck it up us the best way usually.
It's funny how the years go on, we never seem to learn that. The more abuse they get.
Oh, there's Christian Nadi, let's call him fat. Oh, he scored again.
Jason Scotland.
Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. But I came down to somebody who, for me, wasn't that good a player, but I still really disliked him, Stephen Presley. It could be bordering on an irrational dislike for him the whole time he was at Hearts. For the fact that I felt he was really overrated. Like, he made a good career for himself, but I thought he was, to play the number of times he did for Scotland, I think is miraculous. And I put an indictment of how poor the team was at the time. And no doubt a great captain and leader, but I just didn't think he was a good footballer. And the way that he managed matches despite not being a manager yet, so he's obviously had many years of practice before he became a manager on running games, and again it's one of these Jambos that seem to thrive playing against Hibs and like run to Hibs fans and give it the whole sort of like Jesus cross thing, and it's like, you're just a bit of a tool, mate. You're just such a unlikable person. So he would be my target with Stephen Presley.
Kicking him while he's down as well. No class, Mikey. No class. The man loses his job and he's subject to a McMuffin in a pus.
He was poor Derek last week, so I'm coming back and hitting a man when he's...
But Derek was in the midst of a comeback, so he was topical. But no, fair point. I think Hearts fans got a glimpse of certain things that Prez had done from the other side when he came back with Celtic, and certainly when he thumped his chest, he lost a lot of support within the Hearts support. And then there was actually another time that gets forgotten about, but Falkirk knocked us out the Scottish Cup at Tynecastle, and we were awarded a penalty. I think Michael Stewart went down the box, and Presley basically took the ref aside for 30 seconds, had a chat, and then there was no penalty anymore. So I'm not quite sure what he said, but he definitely seemed to have something over a few referees, Mikey.
Also a prolific diver, and he always got away with it. The maestro running 30 yards and then falling over in the halfway line.
The master of, there's someone breathing on my shoulder, I'll fall on the ball and I'll definitely get it. Right, okay, we're going to move on to another hot topic at the moment then. McMuffin's technically only hot, but we'll go with it. Connor mentioned apple pies. There's my link. Right, season tickets. They've come out just over the last couple of days. There's a rather emotive video that went with it, which I have to say I forced my neutral girlfriend to watch just to see what the reaction was for someone who has no interest at all. And I didn't really get what I expected. She was like, it was alright, that doesn't really help me for the show, thanks for your help. But it does seem to be a pretty slick marketing campaign that they've put together, so I want to get the view from you Hibs fans on what you think of it so far and how much it entices you into joining them on the journey next season, hopefully into the SPL. Firstly, the pricing, Connor. What are your thoughts on the deals that they've unveiled?
I think it's perfectly fine. I mean, they've knocked sort of 5% off most of the tickets, and you still have the option of the payment plan, interest free, which I think is as good a deal as any you're going to get. There's still some people arguing that the season ticket prices are too high and that we don't know where we're going to be playing next year, which is valid to a certain extent. But I think our pricing structure was vindicated this January after our transfer window. Being able to hold on to Scott Allen and bring in some new players. Leanne Dempster can more or less point at that and say, we do have a reduced number of season ticket holders this year. Potentially future trips to Hampden might artificially bump it up again, as it had done a couple of years before that, which is always a help. But I think the fact that our season ticket prices have gone down, and there's a range of options for all fans at the minute. The cut top up is always a gamble. I think everyone knows that. 50 quid, it could just go down the drain, or it could pay for sort of 4 or 5 games. So that's always a gamble every year. I think everyone knows that. But I think for fans who can't make it to every game, this new loyalty scheme is quite important too, because there are a lot of walk-up fans who feel like they're ignored to a certain extent when it comes to cup finals or whatever. The fact that they're continued purchases at the club are being logged is something quite important as well. So all round, I think it's really positive. I mean, you're probably going to get onto the market in a second, but I was really impressed today when I saw that video for the first time.
Craig, just to stay on the pricing for a moment, you let me know during the week that you're partial to a wee seat in the famous 5 upper.
Yep.
And I was it. So anyone who's wanting to meet one of the Monday night football crew, get yourself in there and look for Craig looking shifty. So you let me know that you're partial to a seat there. One thing, for obvious reasons, I'm not frequently going through the season ticket literature for Easter Road on a yearly basis, so this is the first year that I've properly gone through it. One thing that stuck out for me, having been used to the Tynecastle pricing structure, is that it's one price really across the board, other than the famous 5 lower section. It's a consistent price for the famous 5 upper at the East Stand and the West Stand. That the early bird price there £360, the regular price £380. What are your thoughts on that, Craig, not having platinum seats or premium seats or anything, the fact that it's just kind of one price across the board?
I think it's good, because I think if you go to Easter Road, you'll find that no matter where you are in the ground, you'll get a decent view. I mean, I've had my season ticket in the famous 5 upper for my first season was the last time we got relegated in '98. So I think the pricing's pretty fair. I think the famous 5 lower is maybe a bit cheaper because it entices families a bit more. That seems to be when the Section 43 fans started their group, that was one of the complaints, that it was all the famous 5 stand seems to be the quieter one. It's more family oriented, and I've certainly noticed that because I sit right at the front of the upper. There's a lot of kids underneath me, but no, I think the pricing's fairly fair, and also it gives you you don't have to. There's not an option for you can get a season ticket for X amount of money, but you won't get to see games against Hearts or games against Rangers. If you get a season ticket, you've got a ticket for the season. It's not because you paid a bit less, you miss out on X amount of games. You get the full 19. Well, what's it this season? 18 games, 19 if we're in the top league. So no, I think it's fairly decent, yeah. Right,
Mikey, let's get on more to the marketing element of it then. What are your thoughts on the approach that Hibs have taken, the promotional video, I have to say I think it's fairly slick marketing, but this real thing of there is a movement, join us, on this journey back to where we belong. What are your thoughts on it? Do you think it'll work?
I like the idea. I've not seen the video myself, but I've heard various people talking it up as a complete change of direction, something that actually looks relatively serious. When I think that probably Hibs and Hearts have both been guilty of some quite amateurish campaigns, whether it's their season tickets or their shops or whatever it might be. I remember all the beautiful people of Tynecastle, I think, on the beach. was that a particular favourite of mine, and the whole camouflage thing at Easter Road with Butcher's Green and White Army, but it looks like
swear on radio, mate. Come on.
It seems like they've got some people involved who know what they're doing, making it appeal to fans. The greatest marketing tool we've got just now is Stubbs and the team and the results that we're getting, and I think that's going to truly drive the success of the season tickets for next year. I think that I could almost see us maybe retaining the same number of season tickets even if we stayed in that division, dependent on how the end of the season looks and how it. If it didn't get promoted, I think how it happened, the nature of it, would really dictate if we were able to retain 8,000 season tickets next season, and who we were able to hold on to. Before the end of the season, they could say Scott Allen's extended by a year, McGeoch signing, so on and so forth, and having the building blocks of a team in place, perhaps supported by the early people who sign up, by the uptake on things like HSL and the share scheme. So I like that they've got out there quick. It couldn't have been timed much better over the last week or so. The buzz was starting, and also the last few days they've got the prices out. Rangers helped us a great deal at the weekend with some fantastic marketing for us to sort of get people that wee further bit excited by potentially giving us a bit more of a gap if results go our way. So kind of doff the cap to people involved at the club, which isn't something we can sort of say a great deal about in the last few years. They're getting things right bit by bit, and something like this, they can't get it right in August. It has to have to bide their time. So everything I think at the moment that Dempster and her team are doing just continues to impress people who are waiting to invest in the club. So I think it's another sort of definitely a tick in the box, if not quite a gold star yet. We'll see kind of how it works and the uptake.
I think, like, going back as well, just to what you were saying, Mikey, like if you compare this time last year, when we launched our season ticket campaign the day after we got knocked out by Raith Rovers in the Cup, and this letter arrives with green and black camouflage all over it, and it was so embarrassing opening it off with Terry Butcher's army plan for marching us up the league, and I was just like, I mean, how old do you think we are? It's like for 8-year-olds or something. And I did feel a bit sorry for the marketing people, because they had very little to grasp onto to sort of promote the club. But what a step forward. I mean, there was also an email today to season ticket holders from Leanne Dempster, and it was same sort of thing, very positive, highlighting the successes that we'd had so far. And for once, it wasn't just PR speak, which is what the last few years have been like. Just keep backing the club and things will get better. It was there did seem to be some substance to it, which again is pretty positive.
That in itself is actually why I felt it necessary, or I wanted to gauge my girlfriend's reaction to it, because it sounds like the most basic, almost backhanded compliment you can possibly make. But I think the biggest compliment for this marketing campaign is that it is a legitimate marketing campaign. For so long, Scottish football clubs have come from the background of, well, we know our audience knows us, they know what they get when they buy a season ticket. Who are we selling it to? What is the purpose of it? Which is why I showed it to someone not interested in football at all, just to see, because I think there are previous things that you could have shown them and they would have said, what is that? That's an embarrassment. A normal, a legitimate company would never put that in the public realm. Whereas this video, literally little things like the production values are really good. It's high quality, it's properly HD, the editing's perfect, the song kind of fits it, little things like that. You think you could see that on TV, you could encounter that in any setting and think, oh, that was quite a slick outfit. I understand.
Work in a different realm, but promoting a different business, like the same kind of the format of it could work promoting something different.
Exactly, it stands up when compared against other businesses, whereas for so long Scottish football has made the mistake of only comparing itself to Scottish football, which, without talking the game down, for periods of time has been the lowest possible yardstick you could say yourself, without being too blunt about it. It is the case. If you are comparing your marketing to Inverness Callie's marketing, or they are clubs who are severely limited by locale, and they can only do so much, and I think for a long time,
so much as well.
Exactly, for a long time we have compared ourselves against clubs who aren't necessarily that forward thinking, and both Hearts and Hibs, as supporters, we think should be pushing the envelope, seeing where they can go. With that in mind, do we think that we will see a big increase in season tickets no matter what happens over the playoffs? Do we think that there will be a rush here, that people are more invested, or is it a wait and see what happens and see what division we're in?
I think there's still a lot of people that are hedging their bets. I think there's a lot. The crowds aren't as big as they should be. I think Sunday's game was a bit bigger, a couple of thousand more people there than usual, and I think that was a lot of people coming back for the first time, because no matter how many good things they hear, no matter how many good results we get, there were so many people like absolutely disgusted with what happened last year that they said they wouldn't be coming back, and meant it. And I think stopping going to the football, I think it's quite easy to just get out of the habit of it and find something else to do on your Saturday. So it's these people that are going to be quite hard work to reel back in. And
I think it's the people that are walked away last season because Petrie never left. There's a lot of, reading on thebouncing.net quite a bit, there's still, regardless of how well we're doing on and off the pitch this season, and like we said before, I think you have to doff the cap to Leanne Dempster. I think if you looking at all the signings Hibs have made since last season, she's probably the most important one. But a lot of fans are still really disgruntled with the fact that Farmer and Petrie are still involved, and I think it's right now, with the way that we're going, I think it's just a bit of an easy excuse not to go back, really. Might get a bit of criticism for that, but I think it's, you don't support Petrie and Farmer, you support, the team on the park. We were horrendous last season. I can understand people walking away for that reason, but Petrie's given Dempster the chance to run the club the way she wants. She's done that. She's implemented a different structure at Hibs that we've not seen before. With the director of football, we've got George Craig there as well, we've got Joe McBride heading up the youth. Eddie May heading up the youth development, and we've got a really, really good coach, a head coach in Stubbs. So I think that, you know, the closer we get to the end of the season, the crowds will maybe pick up. But I think that I've completely forgot what the
it was so slick until that point. Right, final question on this before we go to some ads, and then we will come back and talk about the Scottish Cup. Mikey, is there any concern that the ongoing ownership change or the share process that we're going through at the moment, that distracts from the season tickets? Actually, within the literature, that was the only bit I was slightly surprised by, is that within the literature for the season tickets there is also a big section outlining, you know, Hibernian Supporters Limited. You're fighting over people's money. They are within the same structure. You're saying, well, you know, HSL needs your money, but we also need your season ticket money, and people don't necessarily have that much disposable income at this point. Is there any concern that people are having to make a choice which one of those to go with?
I suppose there is, but I can't see somebody taking the choice of investing in HSL over a season ticket if they were minded to buy a season ticket. So I think that people who are opening that envelope, who are going, you know, I'm pretty sure I'm going to buy a season ticket, and then see the HSL chat, I don't think they're going to be less encouraged to buy a season ticket. So I don't think it's going to negatively impact on that front. It might just convince the folk who maybe do have a couple of quid in their pocket to go, well, I can get a season ticket and I can chuck another £20 in a month on top of that if they're paying if they've got the means to pay their season ticket up front, they might not miss £20 a month. So I think it's a kind of win-win. I can't see there being a circumstance where somebody's turned off a season ticket by seeing anything to do with the HSL. It's just an additional opportunity without sort of kind of rubbing it in people's faces. Like it's there, you can do it if you wish to do so, but this is about a season ticket, and I don't think we're going to see less funding coming into the club because of that. The average price of the HSL sign up is going to be less than a season ticket, but I still think people will go for the season ticket because you also have something tangible that you're paying for, whereas we all know that if you're going to HSL, you're not doing it with the sort of the mindset of I'm going to make money off this. So I don't see it having a really negative impact. Anyone who's going to moan about it is going to moan about like the fact that like night comes after day as well. So I think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be a problem.
I think as well, like a lot of walk-up fans, like for a lot of people, buying a season ticket is just an act of folly because they are going to miss a good 50% of games, and you know, for me, I know that I'm going to miss 4 or 5 games at least a season, and the extra money I spend I see as this kind of goodwill gesture or donation or whatever. But people who generally can't, people like yourself, Mikey, who work at weekends, you know, if they've got an option now to donate a minimum at £10 a month to Hibs and, you know, continue to buy walk-up tickets when they're able to, and because of the loyalty scheme, that's going to be noted, you know, the fact that they have been attending games. So when it comes to allocation of cup final tickets or whatever, you know, there's some record of their attendance. So it's just another avenue for somebody who wants to make a gesture towards their club without, you know, splashing out £430 and, you know, is able to attend maybe 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 games. There are options there for them too.
Perfect. Well, we're going to go to a short break right now, and then we will come back for loads more Hibs chat, specifically about the Berwick Rangers game and the Scottish Cup run, and then we will go on to talk about the league and some other things in the build-up to what is going to be an exciting end to the season. Stay with us on Monday Night Football on Radio Saltaire. Thank you for staying with us on this Hibernian special episode of Monday Night Football. My name is Sam Meakin. I'm joined in the studio by Mikey Wilson, Craig Leach and Connor Heaney. Right, boys, let's move on to Hibernian 4, Berwick Rangers 0. Mikey, let's start with yourself. Thoughts on the game? I know you were a wee bit gutted that your 4-0 came up, but your 5 any time never.
Furious, especially when like Alan cut that wee corner back to him. I was like, it was already 2-0. I was furious, but then I thought if we went 3-0 up there, it was going to probably get silly. So I was just biding my time, and every substitution that came, I was like, he's still in the park, and then ruined, absolutely ruined. But professional job. Basically, it's the kind of match that in the past we've really made hard work of. Berwick had a decent wee start for them. Like this was the absolute epitome of the one-off match. Like there really wasn't going to be a replay. It wasn't a 2-legged playoff. They had to throw absolutely everything at it. And like Connor was saying when we were on the way in, like they they played a really high tempo pressing game, the five in the midfield just getting in everybody's faces, and it did disrupt us a wee bit at the start, and they got a couple of wee sort of scrappy things in the box, but like Oxley was never really worked as much as such. But 4-0 through, it was a entirely comfortable performance. There weren't any scares. We probably should have scored a couple more, but it wasn't going to be like a sort of 8 or a 9 sight result, and I think they were quite sensible in the way they sort of preserved energy and effort, knowing that what's to come in for the next sort of 10 days. I think that was quite noticeable, that they were not having to bust a gut. Guys like David Gray, who's obviously carrying injuries and hasn't been 100%, good run out for him, but he didn't have to overexert himself. I think probably consciously at times didn't. So no, I'm perfectly happy with the performance. A few good individual displays amongst it, but it was just like completely professional, and some might say quite unlike us for that type of match in the past. So it was a bit of a pleasure to see us go out and just have no worries about what was going to happen.
Connor, the analysis of this match follows a similar theme to the analysis of on the Hearts Only episode last week of their victory over Cowdenbeath, where you have to be glowing in your praise of, like Mikey says, how functional a performance it was, how easy a win it was. As you know, we're always told there are no easy games, but there are still sometimes, and this one was an easy victory for Hibs, but that does have to be tinged. You do have to offset that with the fact that there were clear deficiencies in that Berwick Rangers team, but Hibs exploited those. I think an obvious example is the first goal. It's a fantastic pass from Stevenson, great movement from Cummings, but their centre-half drops 2 yards off to give himself insurance and just plays Cummings miles onside, gets nowhere near him, allows Cummings 8 yards for goal and just scores. But Hibs did show themselves adept at capitalising on those basic errors from Berwick, didn't they?
Oh, that was great awareness from Stevenson as well. But I mean, you got to remember, Berwick are potentially, in danger of being relegated from the division altogether into the Lowland League, so that was bound to happen. And I actually found for the first 25 minutes they provided more of a test than the likes of Cowdenbeath and Dumbarton have in recent weeks. As Mikey was saying, the midfield was awfully crowded, and a couple of our star players actually, I think, struggled a little. I think Scott Allen and Dylan McGeoch both were sort of they were sort of out of the game a little. A lot of McGeoch's passing wasn't quite coming off, and Allen just seemed out of sorts. And I think that was everything to do with the Berwick game plan, which seemed to be sort of just hassless for the first 20 minutes. And obviously that can't go on for the whole game because the part timers, the levels of fitness won't last the whole game. But it did seem like Oxley was potentially in danger of making maybe a mistake that could have been pounced on. And if that had happened, for example, to played us a year ago, that could easily have happened, where we go a goal down and then really start to struggle. I still think it was more or less a foregone conclusion. I think even when Berwick were sort of hassling us and pressing us, I think we more or less sat back and just let them tire themselves out and then quickly pounced with that quick double header of a goal, both of which heavily involved Lewis Stevenson, who was fantastic. So yeah, I agree that these deficiencies, they're bound to be there. Let's face it, they're sort of a League 2 team, and who struggled to make it past Spartans in the last round. And I did think they played a lot better than some of the Championship opposition we've had at Easter Road this year.
Okay, let's stay on the positives then. Craig, Lewis Stevenson, he showed again that he's added a lot to his game this season. Particularly, he's thriving in that left wing back position.
Definitely. I think Lewis has had. Well, that's been, it's fun. It's weird to think that that's now 8 years since that cup final, where he completely bossed it. And he's never really sort of managed to pinpoint a place in the side. Even last season, at times he was playing at right back, which was, I always viewed him as a sort of centre midfielder when he first came through, because that's where he played in the cup final. But no, I think he's been given a new lease of life under Stubbs. For Lewis Stevenson, he scored like 2 goals in 190 odd games, and now he's got 2-3 in his last 8. So I think that he's definitely. I think he comes in for a lot of stick for non-Hibs fans as well. A lot of Hearts fans seem to like a couple of my mates especially like to mock Stevenson a bit, but I think he's if you were to pick one player out of that team that Hibs fans could really identify with, it would be Lewis, because he's been there from for the Mowbray days, through all the rubbish after that, and now with Stubbs. But I think he's definitely, maybe that's him now hitting his peak. It's taken him a while to find a settled position within the team, but now he's hitting his peak. I think we're really starting to see what kind of player that he is, especially now that he's developed more of an attacking instinct as well.
Okay, Mikey, any other clear positives for you? Any other specific individual performances? We know there were bigger positives which we will definitely speak about in a moment, but any individuals who stuck out, or was it just the kind of game where it was really about being a 7, 8 out of 10 and making sure you didn't make any mistakes?
No, I think that was very much the case. It was the team took care of the business. So Stevenson's getting a lot of praise for the assist, the goal, and the part he played in the third game. I still think Dylan McGeoch had a good match. He was still really influential without being the guy who is with the final pass. All he did, he set up Malonga for the shot that led to Stanton's goal. I do think that McGeoch played well. He was playing a bit further up the park than he has previously, and he was finding himself in a lot of things around the edge of the box, showing good feet and trying to find little passes. I think, again, it's hard to judge with the opposition, but I'm liking how Cummings' game's coming on. I like the way that he was dropping deep quite a bit and sort of linking the game up. So Malonga likes to go wide, and they were playing. He seemed to be much more aware of where Malonga was, almost prior to receiving the ball and turning and facing him. I think that was becoming more of a partnership that maybe it has been at times this season. But I think it's just his maturity and his game intelligence is coming on every match, and it was good to see that. Good to see it developed in a bit more of a kind of less pressurised environment against a weaker side, and he does have that in his game to show a wee bit more intelligence in his play. So that was for me that was a positive, seeing a bit more to his game than just being the sort of wee penalty box player, and anything that comes to him within 20 yards you just had a bit of a strike at it. I think that was a positive as well. Okay, let's talk on the slight negative then in terms of individual performances. I agree with you, Mikey, that I think Dylan McGeoch came onto his game and added a lot more for the period of the second half when he was on, played more of a part in the game. I have to say, for the first kind of 20-25 minutes, I thought McGeoch and Allen played. The only way I could describe it is like when you're playing FIFA in Be a Pro mode, and you get the ball with your individual, and every time you're thinking either I'm going to beat 3 men and score or I'm going to play a World Cup winning pass every single time. And I thought you saw that with McGeoch a couple of times where he tried to play quite deep in the midfield, so he had the whole game in front of him, and he tried to drive 20 yards at times and took a 10-yard touch and was robbed because the midfield was packed. And a game with Allen, I thought Allen gave the ball away more than he can be a wee bit erratic anyway, but you're always on the basis that one of these passes will create a goal. I thought he gave the ball away carelessly a lot more than normal. Is there any concern in that, or was it purely just that they were playing Berwick Rangers, they were thinking I can afford to be a wee bit looser on the basis that when these goals do come there'll be an avalanche of goals?
I guess, you sort of worry that maybe having not been particularly tested very much in the last few home games, that the players are starting to lose concentration a little, and that's the first 25 minutes. That's what I was concerned about. Is as you were saying, we were losing possession an awful lot, and I think going into the second half, I think Alan was just having one of those games. It reminded me of a couple of his early performances with us, where he just wasn't making the right pass. He didn't seem to be aware of what was around him, and I remember a specific time he was racing up on the left, and Cummins was in perfect position, just not paying attention, trying to take on the man in front of him, which again is exciting and it's exhilarating to watch. But occasionally that happens with Scott Allen. So I think circumstances were the fact that they knew Berwick were going to tire themselves out. I think that's just I think everybody knew that was going to happen eventually. But for a little while, I think these lapses in concentration, if we're playing stronger opposition, could have cost us quite dearly.
Again, all of this is tempered, as Connor says, by the opposition. I think the only other negative that really came from the game, in the second half there was a period of relatively concerted pressure from Berwick, where Hibs did look a wee bit on the ropes, mainly of their own making, in that they didn't seem quite set at the back, possibly because they were so set on going forward at every opportunity. But even in the first half, when it was a wee bit kind of toe to toe, Oxley looked flappy again on a couple of occasions where I think everyone's heart was in their mouth for a moment, thinking, well, if they score, then it's something to hold on to. Equally, there were a few bits of confusion between the centre halves, a few full-backs out of position at points. Was there a concern there, or again was it just that it was that kind of game where you could sort of afford that? Mikey, what do you think?
I think it's just a wee bit probably forgiven for a wee bit of lack of shape and a lack of discipline, given the result and the performance attached to it, like in terms of like, the real sort of domination of the game overall. I think there was going to be moments where people are maybe overextending themselves and fullbacks getting up the park like they always do, but maybe that person who covers in normally wasn't quite tracking back as fast as they normally would. So I think there was a wee tiny lack of discipline, but I don't think it was anything that would particularly upset Stubbs. He might have just said to him, look guys, just go out and entertain the fans. Like, it's been a long time since we went to Easter Road and regularly saw us as a home side playing good football, looking to create things and score goals. So it might be the case that at half time it's 2-0, like let's try and stick a couple more on early on, and get it tucked away and I can make my subs basically. And obviously it's taken a bit longer in the game for them to get those extra goals, so I think he might have said to try and get it finished off early doors, and they've overcommitted perhaps on certain occasions, and that's why it's maybe led to a wee bit of lack of structure and shape. But I don't think it's a particularly big problem to look at.
Craig, were you ever concerned that if Berwick snuck a goal then it may have all become a wee bit ropey in that period where it was 2-0?
No, I don't think so. I think the only times the heart was in the mouth a bit was, I think it was first half when Oxley flapped it across. I'm still not 100% convinced with Mark Oxley either, but that's another subject for another day. But no, I think I said that a few weeks ago that, you know, in the past, if Berwick had, teams like Berwick had snuck a goal, Hibs would maybe, you know, faltered a bit and went back into their shells and not really took the game back to them. But no, there was never really a concern. I think the only real chance they had was Gold in the first half, had a header at the back post, and he skewed it wide.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, apart from that, I can't really think of any other, you know, sort of clear-cut chances that Berwick Rangers would have had.
I think from an outsider's perspective, that's the big difference in terms of mentality that we're seeing with Hibs at the moment, is that, some people, again, non-Hibbies were coming into this match saying, anyone putting money in that, but it's Hibs in the Scottish Cup, these things happen, but they happened previously because that feeling almost existed within Easter Road as well, that this is us in the cup and you never know, especially because there wasn't a real trust in the players on the park. Even in the previous cup runs, that was in spite of the league form, in spite of the general kind of quality in the team, whereas now there is complete faith from the stands that this team's good enough to do the job that they've been set for that day. And because of that, there's a conviction from everyone in Easter Road that, even if they do sneak a goal, we'll just score another and we'll make it comfortable. And that's why I think there's a real difference in this run than previous runs. So let's get on to that. Another semi-final. It's almost second nature to Hibs now to be going to Hampden. I mean, that's the funny thing, is Hibs are looked at as being this, almost this kind of joke outfit in the Scottish Cup, and yet they've been more consistent than any other non-Old Firm team in the Scottish Cup over the years. It's just that final hurdle that is consistently causing the problem. What are the thoughts on the draw, Falkirk? Happy with that?
Well, I mean, it's as good a draw as any of the teams that are left. Falkirk's obviously a team that we struggled to we've not beaten them at all. We've struggled against this year. They've beaten us twice, but I think every time we've played them, we've improved month on month, and it's been a little while. That 3-3 draw was a little unlucky back in January. But I think that's as good a draw as any, and I think a big Hibs support. All the fans remember they're Hibs fans every time we go to Hampden. They'll turn up, and memories, of course, are cast back to a couple of years ago with that famous 4-3 semi-final, which was just one of the most bizarre games I've ever been to. I don't think it'll be anything like that. Fingers crossed, I think my heart could take it, But yeah, there is something quite funny about Hibs fans going to Hampden, because I remember going to that particular semi-final against Falkirk, and the fans going to the game, it was like the death march. It was just like, here we go again. It was obviously the first time we'd been there since that fateful final the year before, and it's funny, just all these memories at hand, and we go there quite regularly, and unfortunately it doesn't always go to plan. But that was quite a game, so I think a lot of people are thinking back to that and with apprehension, perhaps.
It's funny how things change as well, though, in the world of football, because I remember, particularly at half-time when Hibs were 3-0 down there, and it being this thing of, especially amongst Hearts fans, this is absolutely unbelievable. Whereas the reason for that was because there was this perceived gulf between Hibs and Falkirk, that Falkirk at that side, because they had been out of the SPL for a period of time, were looked at as being a bit of a diddy club, really, and how are Hibs being so comprehensively swept aside. And then when Hibs came back, there was that thing of, well, there is that gulf between the clubs. Whereas now you look at Falkirk, and it's obviously because we're in the same league, but it's almost not like the same club from that semi-final, because now you're looking at it as they're a formidable outfit. They've matched us a number of times, when both Hearts and Hibs have played them in the league. It's a weird approach, but you almost think it might suit Hibs better, that they're aware of what they're going into. There's no pressure, there's none of that. If Hibs were to lose the game, no one's going to be laughing, really, because, well, it's two teams in the same league, both going for the playoffs and stuff. Mikey, is that a help for Hibs, that in actual fact there's more realism going into this game, that it will be a tough challenge?
I think so. There'll be a bit more respect paid, I think. I also think that I don't think I'll find a single Hibs fan who would put the team of today up against the team of 2 years ago and not expect us to do a job on them. It's a better group of individuals and a better group together than the gang that turned up that day, basically.
Paul Kearney's performance that day
there's just an endless number of people. Scott Robertson,
he came off looking like the most haunted footballer I've ever seen.
It's great to see him playing well now, but I think that there'll be an absolutely different attitude, and that comes from the top as well. Like, Stubbs won't let them go into that match with anything other than like the complete focus, like they're playing Hearts or Rangers in a big league match coming towards the playoffs. It'll be viewed with the same importance. For me, I think he gets how important it is for a club to lay down a marker to their supporters. He's obviously played for Everton as an Evertonian, and understands the importance that a city kind of puts on its football players at times, and I think he'll be putting that into the players going forward as well, going like, this is a massive day, you could go a step towards really making massive history, as well as what you're doing in the league. This is a kind of second, like a sidetrack and a bonus, so use it as further fuel to carry us through at the end of the season, like just gain more momentum. So I think that it will be a hugely exciting, and I think a positive experience on the day, and I think they'll approach it completely in the right fashion. Okay, Craig, we're going to wrap up on the Scottish Cup now, and we will go a short break and then come back to discuss the league and the playoffs and that other area of huge excitement and knockout ties and stuff there. But in terms of the Scottish Cup, this is completely unexpected. It's come in a logical fashion, in that you've navigated each round, and we knew that as each round went by and there was a winnable draw, that there was very much possible to get there. But had we gone back to when this show started in September and said, by the way, Hibs will be in the Scottish Cup final against a championship, Scottish Cup semi-final against a championship club, I don't necessarily think we would have believed that was going to be the case. For you, how massive a bonus is this season, that there is a real chance here with a Hibs team on a high, which in theory, had Hibs been in the SPL, in future years when Hibs are in the SPL, may not be possible to have a team on such a winning run and so much momentum carried into these showpiece affairs?
Definitely. It's another wee day out for us at hand, and I think they're going to rename it the Hibs end now rather than the Rangers or Celtic end. We've frequently did that many times. But,
certainly more than Rangers in the last few years.
But no, it's a massive bonus, and I think if you look back to the difference, if you look at as Mikey says, that gang that showed up the last time versus the team that we've got now. Back then we had some call a Maverick and Griffiths that many times during that season he pulled us out of some terrible positions, whereas this time we've got so many different players that are capable. You've got Stevenson making rampaging runs down the left. You've got David Gray on the right. You know, McGee will chip in with a goal. Scott Allen can ping in a free kick. We've still got El Alagui to come back. But no, it's good to have that positivity going into a Scottish Cup final. Get a bit ahead of myself.
I know.
Going into
semi-final.
Semi-finals with a bit of positivity behind us, rather than, you know, like the last two semis we were in. You know, one of them we were 7th or 8th in the league. The other one we were 11th. You know, it's good to go in there with a bit of belief that, you know, in games that the high-profile games, apart from the first game against Hearts, we've no really, you know, if you look at the games with Hearts and Rangers, some would say we were the better side in both derbies. We've definitely been the better side against Rangers. So hopefully, you know, this game with the importance on it, you know, Stubbs will drill it into them, like how much this means, and he'll drill it into them how much it means to the fans, and I'm sure Stevenson and Hanlon will chip in with that as well. So hopefully we can keep riding that wave of optimism, and it'll take us into the final.
I think as well that, like, in the previous seasons, the cup run was almost seen as a burden on what we were trying to achieve, which was both seasons staying up when we did manage it, and I think a lot of people as well are probably almost resentful of the second cup run because it kept Fenlon in a job for longer than perhaps we should have been. But I don't think it's going to be treated as a burden or a kind of extra weight this season. It's going to be something else. It's just like jumping on the bandwagon, like, this is a great thing that's happening to us this season, let's carry it on, let's take it, let's run with it and see what happens. And it's the success of our season isn't going to be measured by what we do in the cup, it's going to be what we do in the league, whereas in the previous seasons it's been like, we're sitting 8th in the league, so we really need to do something in the cup. So I think it's got a complete opposite perspective amongst the fans, and hopefully amongst the players and the coaching staff as well.
I think we've got a winner at the helm as well. Like, obviously Alan Stubbs has been at Hampden quite a few times and won, and you know, he's used to the ground and stuff. I mean, I don't want to stick the boot into a wee pat, but he was completely out of his depth. Like, and you know, I think you know, some of our trips to Hampden were pretty embarrassing, to say the least. I think Stubbs, you know, he's shown himself that games we've played at Ibrox, for example, he's not struggled at all. He's been tactically astute, and I think the same will happen at Hampden. He's used to sort of maybe not managing at that level, but playing in front of crowds like that and knowing how to win. And I think that's an important thing as well. We've got like a competent hand at the wheel.
When we come back from the break, we're going to talk about the Championship a wee bit before we start to wrap up the show. But I think the real fascinating thing with this cup run, and it's been present throughout the season, is that this league has affected both clubs in ways that we couldn't possibly have foreseen. It's been a weird experience, both being down in the lower league, especially at the same time. It's pretty foreign to us. You know, we've only seen it once or twice in our lifetime at the very most. But what we're actually seeing is that there have been real positives of it, and it, you know, for the Hibs Cup run at the moment, like I say, I think the biggest thing for me, looking at it from an outside perspective, is that because of the way the SPL set up, if you are a non-Old Firm team, unbeaten runs of 10 games, 12 games, 15 games are almost unheard of, because everyone is much of a muchness, everyone trips each other up. It's why you very rarely get a formidable challenge to the Old Firm, because they can, you know, dish out humpins to Hamilton and Kilmarnock and teams like that week in, week out, and we're just not always equipped to do it. Hibs are on those kind of runs. Hibs are on an Old Firm style run at this moment in time of just sheer consistency, grinding out results. Maybe not always wins, but you don't have to win every game in the cup. As long as you didn't lose, then you're still in it. And that's why this season presents a really unique opportunity, I think, because it's unlikely that we will ever see either club on a run like this again, unless fortune conspires to keep Hibs in the Championship next season, in which case we'll hope that will be a 36 game unbeaten season. But if we both get back to the SPL, it's very unlikely we'll ever see a 20 game unbeaten run or anything like that again, certainly going into a Scottish Cup semi-final. So with that in mind, I think it's hugely important. I want to gauge this as we go on in terms of the opportunity that this presents to Hibs. We'll check back in each week and we'll see how the momentum's progressing, how the season's progressing. But for each of you guys at this moment in time, if Hibs don't make the Scottish Cup final from this position, just one word answer, maybe elaborate a wee bit if you want. how big a disappointment is it into, from the opportunity of ending the hoodoo? I know we're saying it's not the priority, but being set up the way it is now, how disappointed are you if Hibs fail to progress past Falkirk in the semis, Mikey?
Marginally more disappointed than I would be if we lost like our next league game to them, in terms of the importance of it. It's a big match. Like we've talked about, they were probably perceived to be more evenly matched than in previous seasons. So it would have to be in the context of how the games between now and then in the league go, and go, well, if we're still sitting second and we've maybe built a wee cushion up against Rangers, this is more than one word by the way, if the results between now and the semi-final are still going really well in the league and we get beat by Falkirk, it might be like, that's a bit a sore one, but shake it off, we're going to finish second at this point and we just need to take care of Rangers and then whoever finishes bottom of the SPL. So the context will have to be taken into account, like the week of that match and the week after it, between how it is.
So for you it's offset by the fact that even if you lose the semi-final, there's still an opportunity to achieve something tangible in the season, which has never been the case before.
Absolutely.
Okay, Craig, how disappointed are you if Hibs fail to progress past Falkirk at this moment in time? Like I say, we'll gauge it as we go on, but at this moment in time, how gutted would you be if Hibs failed to take the opportunity to progress to the Scottish Cup final?
I'm going to take it in a completely different view. I think regardless of what we do in the league, for me, the league's the priority, but for me personally, I'd take the cup every single time. So I would,
even if it meant staying in the Championship another season?
Aye,
okay,
definitely. So if we didn't make it past Falkirk, one word, heartbroken.
Okay, I appreciate your honesty, Craig. Connor?
Well, I think my skin's a bit thicker after years of watching Hibs. I think I'm a bit more, I don't know, I would have thought we were all a bit more conditioned to that kind of thing happening. I would like to think that either way it's going to be a positive experience for this team. After the year we've had, a trip to Hampden is just such a bonus, and that's how we should be looking at the cup run, in my opinion. I think the league's more important. Obviously your heart says you choose the cup, but I think we just need to look at any trip to Hampden as a bonus and some experience for some of the players in the team that haven't made it to Hampden, or maybe for guys like Stevenson and Hanlon, a chance to maybe shake off a few of the old bad memories. So yeah, my answer is that I hope it'll be a positive experience either way.
Very interesting. I know that question may have come across as a slightly negative way to word it, but the reason for that was because from an outsider's perspective, I think we are looking at it now thinking, well, the momentum that Hibs have got, really they should be in the final from here, and that's why it potentially, from, like I say, from outside, we would look at it, I think, as a missed opportunity for yourselves if you weren't in the Scottish Cup final, because this might be your best chance, because there are, Celtic have still got a bit of a challenge, so they're not able to rest players for 6 weeks as they have been in every other season. Things are conspiring, and I'm definitely not saying Hibs' name is on the cup, but what I'm saying is,
Sam.
What I'm saying is Hibs have got a stronger chance than in previous years, and I think it would be a big disappointment if they didn't at least capitalise on that as much as possible.
It makes a change. The last two cup finals, the sort of arguments between Hibs fans on the way there was, would you take relegation if we won the cup? So would you give up promotion? At least we've got a double positive there, so it's a better way of framing it. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be on Hibs fans' minds for the next couple of weeks. It's like, what would you prefer? Mm-hmm. And obviously with the fixture congestion, there could be a chance that one happens and the other doesn't, or neither happen, or both happen, or whatever. And that's brilliant, because it's such an exciting end to the year.
Like you say, it's great to have that dilemma of which one would we like to win, rather than which one would we like to sort of, which one, either winning or failing but not failing too badly that we then suffer the consequences. Okay, we're going to go a couple of ads and then we will come back. We're going to talk about the playoffs and the way that the league is set up after Rangers' abject failure at the weekend to beat Cowdenbeath, and then we will go on to a wee bit of a discussion of Hibs season, maybe another 15-20 minutes, and then we'll leave you for the night. But stay tuned for now to Monday Night Football on Radio Saltaire. And we are back on Monday Night Football for more Hibs chat. Right, one thing I think has been hugely neglected after Rangers' failure to beat Cowdenbeath at the weekend, because people have tended to go with the thing of, Hearts are now 5 wins away for the title. But one thing I think people have forgotten is that for the first time that I'm aware of this season, now puts second place in Hibs' hands. Now, it looks a wee bit funny when you look at the table because Rangers have still got the 2 games in hand, but Hibs have got Rangers to play once more at Easter Road, and if they win that, it means even if Rangers win their 2 games in hand, Hibs are in front. How big a thing is that for you, Connor, that Hibs now know if they win all their games remaining, they're in the dominant position for the playoffs?
Oh, that's what's making the end of the season so exciting, as well as everything else that's going on. I mean, how do we look at the fixture list, and the next 10 games are just, every single one of them so important. And we're about to go on a bit of a roller coaster for the next wee while. This is a good chance just to take our breaths and look ahead and think, that game's winnable. And the game against Rangers in particular is massive. The game at Easter Road I think that's going to be a fantastic match.
Is it bigger than the semi-final? To give you still that
possibly.
Just in terms of how big a foot up it gives you in terms of the playoff race.
I think possibly is. I think as the feeling that the team would get if we won that final. If we beat Rangers 4 times in a season and going into the semi-final, we're talking this is uncharted territory, I think. So that is a massive game, and that's one I'm really looking forward to. I think now, obviously we've got a big week, not a big week this week, but a busy week this week, with 3 games and 6 games in 6 days. But I think this is a great opportunity just to look ahead at the upcoming fixtures and just think, if we keep winning, it doesn't really matter what Rangers do, if we keep winning and just go into the playoffs, regardless of where we finish. I mean, we could win. Obviously, we can't win every game because if we beat Rangers, that knocks out of kilter. But if Rangers keep winning and somehow end up above us, if we've still got a really positive momentum behind us going into the playoffs, I think we'll stand a really good chance. That Rangers game coming up is definitely one to put a circle around, because it's going to be quite a game. It's going to be possibly season defining.
Mikey, is second huge, or is it a case of even if you finish third from here, you would still fancy yourself in the playoffs? Now that second, does it change it now that second is in your hands, in that if you weren't to finish second from here, it might actually be a wee bit disappointing?
I think second's preferable, but it's still not essential, because it's preferable in that fingers crossed we have to try and factor in a Scottish Cup final, fingers crossed. And if we have 2 less matches, then that can only work in our favour to try and balance all that out, given the kind of extraordinary dates that have been put forward for potential playoff matches. So I think that I just think it's really exciting, and I think that I just can't wait for it. I can't wait for these next 4, 5, 6 weeks and seeing how it plays out.
Craig, do you share Mikey's general optimism for the next few weeks?
Aye, definitely. It's good to be behind a Hibs side where you're actually, you're not dreading the game that's coming up next. You're actually looking forward to it, and not just looking forward to that. You're looking at the next sort of bulk of fixtures and thinking, hold on, we can get a win here, a win here, a win here. And like you said, now I think it's going to give the players a massive boost knowing that second place is in our hands. Because for the whole of the season, we started relatively poorly. We've been sort of playing catch up since then. It was first it was getting in the top 4, then it was getting into third, and then it was all about catching Rangers. 2 weeks ago it was the case of, hold on, if Rangers win their games in hand, they go 9 points in front. But if Rangers now play their games in hand, win them, and we beat them, we're still ahead of them. And that's in a 2 week space. That's a massive turnaround, and it's got to give the players a massive boost going into that game against them on the 22nd.
I think it's a great point he's making in terms of the overall feeling, because I think if we're all honest with ourselves, a lot of supporters of both Edinburgh clubs over the last 3 years, when they've been going to games, it's been more out of obligation than anything else. It's been a chore.
Well, one thing I think about quite a lot is by the time I was 12 years old, I'd seen a lot of ups and downs with Hibs. I'd seen us win a cup, but I'd also seen us get relegated, and I'd seen good players, and I'd seen the tail end of the Alex Miller and Jim Duffy years, which was awful. If you're like a 10-year-old kid just now, you've just seen awful football your entire life. You've never seen Hibs do anything that inspires you or makes you proud, apart from perhaps when Griffiths was with us. So I think it's brilliant now that, you know, it's great to be talking about this 10 games that are so exciting. I mean, what a change it makes, and hopefully a lot of people will be looking forward to these games too and getting behind us.
Yeah, I just love the fact that we've been talking about, you know, being chase Rangers. Regardless of the games in hand, they now need to chase us. We are 3 points ahead, regardless of the games in hand, given that one of them is against Hearts, who will not want to not beat them 4 times this season. They have to catch us, and that's a really good position to be in, that they don't have the points on the board, we do. So I just like that sort of psychological advantage that we've got over them, as well as I believe, just like on a general in the football park, I think we're better than them.
Again, it's fascinating from a Monday Night Football perspective, because when we set out with this, you know, the manifesto of promoting Edinburgh football and bringing us in here for the banter, but also, you know, presenting a wee bit of a united front, and we did very early, we got on the bandwagon of, look, let's try and root for an Edinburgh 1-2, and now we're going into the business end of the season with that, firstly, as a real possibility, and like I say, possibly a disappointment if it wasn't to actually end up that way. But what we've also got is both teams playing Rangers, and there being clear motivation for either side to want the other to win. So we are, you know, we've already had it with Hibs and Rangers a couple of times where we have been quite vocal, possibly, you know, to the derision of some other jambos, where we've said completely we want Hibs to win because Rangers at that moment in time were our biggest challengers. It's the same here, where Hibs play Rangers on, I think, the 22nd of March. At this moment in time, because Rangers are still the closest in terms of points, we want Hibs to win because it means we win the league quicker. The same with you guys. We've got Rangers to play twice, one of them on the last game of the season. If we can beat them twice, not only does it throw them into turmoil again, having now had the Dave King boost, but it also means that it's far more likely that you'll finish above them. It's that great situation where you do actually have a wee bit of, you know, this united front in Edinburgh, thinking, well, we're going to make sure that even if you do scrape your way into the playoffs, you'll be scraping your way in with no momentum whatsoever. It's actually a really positive situation. Okay, so we're all agreed that Hibs are on a great run, loads of momentum, firing their way into the playoffs, and I think we're all agreed they'll get second as well, are we?
We should. If
Rangers have got a tougher fixture list,
and they just seem to be getting worse. Like
there's Chatty McCoist coming back today.
Honestly, Felix Magath's another one. His name, he apparently landed in Glasgow today.
Well, he had such a phenomenal run at Fulham that obviously he's a clear candidate.
I don't pay much attention to the endless Rangers boardroom saga, but I did hear Dave King more or less saying like he's quite happy for the season to taper out, and then next year start a sort of the new project, so to speak. So
it's funny because it's like we've been talking about the promotion up from into the third division, and the fact that Edinburgh City look like winning that league and they'll come up through the playoffs, and at the moment they're due to meet Brora Rangers from the Highland League, who have actually said no interested, didn't want promotion. So Edinburgh City would go straight into the playoff. Like you say, with Rangers, you almost get that wee thing now where they're thinking, in actual fact, we might just be setting ourselves up for a real embarrassment here. Maybe the worst thing that could happen is we get promotion and then finish 9th in the SPL next season. It might actually be that to a certain extent they opt out, and it seems like they're almost doing that by saying, we're no fussed about making an appointment yet. Alright, so we'll allow McDowell to continue to fail for 3 months.
Give it the trusty hands of Kenny McDowell.
Aye, and then bring in a saviour, you know, someone to
steal a ship towards the rocks.
Exactly. It's you're right, Connor. It's a great point. It seems like they are, to a certain extent, playing it down right from the word go to say that, well, next season will be the rebirth of Rangers, not this one. So
Mark 3.
Aye. So it could be a perfect scenario for Hibs. With that in mind, let's touch on the playoff dates a wee bit before we move on to round up how we got to this stage of the season where there is still so much to play for. The playoff dates, how big an issue are they, Mikey? Or how big a nuisance?
If they don't change them, it's going to be an issue, basically. Ludicrous, and obviously just like utterly nonsense that they clearly been put in place. We thought that, well, it's with Rangers through there anyway, so it doesn't matter to anybody. They're going to have to be reviewed. I think there'll be uproar if the dates were put back into June, as well. So they're going to have to look at some way to try and if Hibs or Falkirk get to the final, well, Hibs or Falkirk will get to the final. If one of them also is in the playoff final, it has to be re-looked at, and they have to, as soon as that semi-final is played, that next game day there needs to be an announcement on what actually is happening with the playoff dates. So it's just it's an utterly bizarre decision to not work around the Scottish Cup final. It does take precedence. It's the kind of showpiece of the Scottish season, and to put a playoff date a day afterwards when there's two teams potentially, technically a third in Raith Rovers if they went on some wild run, could be taking part in this playoff. It's utterly ludicrous and madness, and I think they need to look at a way where potentially looking at the bottom six having an extra midweek fixture to have the season finish a week early, to then try and kind of crowbar in the round the previous weekend, so that has to be the only solution. Otherwise there's like dispensation given all over the place to not only whoever is in the championship side of it, but whoever the SPL side is that's going to be playing in this playoff final. They're going to be in the same boat where they're going to have players out of contract and so on and so forth, and there needs to be a solution found, because both teams, whoever it may be, are going to be disadvantaged in some fashion.
I think you're right, but I think they need to put their foot down and make a decision before the semi-finals kick off, so that there's no, to temper any accusations of it benefiting one team, benefiting, I say Raith Rovers could be involved too, benefiting Hibs, Rangers, Falkirk, or Raith, or the Premiership team that ends up in the playoff. I think leaders need to show a bit of leadership and put their foot down and say, right, this was an unprecedented turn of events, and this is what's going to happen, and it's inflexible. We're not going to be. But I can't see it happening. Unfortunately, it'd be great if they did do that. But
it's hilarious. I think that to look at it from an outsider's perspective, as we all kind of think, you look at it and you think it's hilarious in its farcical nature. I think the most happy people will be the developers of Football Manager, who for years have been caned for I'm in the Champions League final, I'm in the FA Cup final, I've got 8 games in the space of like 2 weeks, I'm playing on the Sunday, I'm playing on the Monday, the Wednesday, and now they can just point to the SPFL playoffs and say, well, it does happen. It does happen. Turns out we were right all along. It is mad, and I think it's especially infuriating because we've spoken so positively about everything that is in Hibs' hands, about how Hibs have taken off from a horrendous situation at the start of the season, and we'll go on to that a wee bit, that they've wrestled it back and they've now put themselves in this great situation, and then something comes completely out of the blue like this because of mismanagement of other individuals who get paid a good wage to sort problems like this, and you then end up thinking we could be severely disadvantaged in what, as we've said, these games probably take precedence in their importance over the Cup, so the two most important games of your entire season, and you can be going in already with a clear disadvantage over your rivals. How frustrating is that for you, Connor? How are you raging?
I'm not really. Let's just take it one step at a time, because it's just the semi-finals coming up. But
like you say, they should be making decisions ahead of time. Even if we're looking at it not from a Hibs perspective, it could be Falkirk in this position.
I would say
it is daft.
It's more exasperation than anger. It's just like, come on, guys.
That's what we already knew.
Why don't you think these things through? I mean, this they were setting themselves up for a fall. I mean, I just, for a wee treat last year, I went to see the East Fife versus Stirling Albion playoff.
What a treat.
It was a good day out, but that was the day after the Scottish Cup final, and I didn't think the thing was going. Obviously the Hibs playoff was a week or so after that, but that I did think that was awfully unusual. Just like, surely the Scottish Cup final is the centrepiece, like the culminating event of the season, and you got all these other games happening after it. It's kind of lessens it a bit, but I mean, I don't expect anything different. I think I'm sure whatever solution they come up with will be equally farcical and infuriating, and that's just the way they're going to be. But hopefully, I mean, just from a practical point of view, I mean, Hibs do have a bit more strength and depth than we had before, so hopefully, Stubbs would be able to use a few of the extra players. I mean, something I forgot to mention when I was talking about the match, how good it was to see Sam Stanton coming on. Yep. He had a really positive influence when he came on. Within the space of 2 minutes, he'd had a shot and then he scored. And players like him
got an assist as well for Fontaine.
Aye. I think like players like him were kind of thrown under the bus a wee bit by what happened last year, but to have him just waiting in the wings, clearly looked really, really hungry when he came on. You know, that kind of thing might be our secret weapon if we do get a bit of fixture congestion at the end of the year.
Okay, let's not tempt fate any longer by talking about Scottish Cup final and playoff final clashes, although I think we do agree that it is needlessly, the setup is already needlessly in favour of the Premier League club retaining their status. Hibs had to, under Terry Butcher, contrive to lose that, do away with all those advantages last season. It's already set up in the favour of the Premier League team. It's especially set up in the favour of the Premier League team this year, which is something that I actually don't think many people have considered, this idea that no one might go up. Everyone's talking about Hibs or Rangers. Well, in theory, if it's set up this way, if the team in the second bottom gets momentum, it might be that the odds are just stacked against whoever gets there. Let's go on to the positives though, rather than that. Let's go on to the positives of the season in general. This was a season that started in farce. It was only when it was mentioned on the coverage yesterday that it really sank into me how farcical it was. The fact that Hibs lost 5 of their first 8 games. Now, we started the podcast then. We started in that backdrop where we were talking about Hibs potentially being involved in a relegation battle. We thought it was unlikely, but at that point we literally couldn't judge either way. That season could have gone anyway. It has gone consistently in an upward direction. So what I wanted to do, just while we're on this Hibs only show, is talk about why. What are the catalysts for that change? What is the biggest reason that Hibs' season changed beyond recognition after 10, 12 games? Connor, what do you put it down to?
I put it down to Talent Stubbs, personally. I think his relationship with the players, he seems to have a special talent for bringing out the best in people. And this was actually another point that you guys made last week, which I disagreed with to a certain extent, is when you were talking about how he sort of lets little bits of information about players' personalities through in his post-match interviews, and he has maybe wee digs at players. I mean, he's sort of teasing Scott Allen for being a hypochondriac, or he occasionally has a wee pop at Malonga for his slowness, his general slowness. He made a wee joke a few weeks ago about how Malonga was walking off the pitch and he's saying that's how fast he walks in real life. But I think his attitude there is a lot more jocular than you guys were sort of insinuating. I think he has a good relationship with the majority of players in the team, which is a refreshing change, because I think the last 3 managers that we've had have been completely aloof for various reasons, with the players just not knowing how to relate to them at all. And we've had, apathy, incompetence, and then just ignorance, one after the other. Calderwood, Fenton, and Butcher. That's 3 words to describe them. And I think personally, his ability to get the best out of our players has been the defining factor. And I'd actually, and it was quite funny because when me and Mikey were driving home the last time we were on, I'd sort of forgotten about that until sort of doing a wee bit of research before the show, and I was like, God, we did have such a terrible start. We were almost sitting at second bottom at one point, and somebody posted an interesting stat on Hibsnet yesterday, which was minus that first 6 games, the points for the season, and I think Hearts were on 51 and Hibs were on 41, and Rangers were way down at like 33. So both Edinburgh clubs have been incredibly consistent since then. I think that's the primary goal, as well as an inspired sort of player identification scheme. I think just getting the best out of guys like Lewis Stevenson and Scott Robertson. I mean, he must be like most improved player all round. We were just talking about how he had that nightmare of a game during the semi-final with Falkirk, and he got subbed off at half-time. He looked horrified. He was pale. I've never seen a player look like that when being subbed off, because he'd had such a bad game, and things didn't really improve a great deal from then. And Stubbs has just brought out the absolute best in him and others. So I say that's the key factor. Is just his motivational skills and ability to identify positive aspects of a player's ability that he can make the most out of, and players that he's not been able to do that with, there's been a few that we've let go. Again, that seems to have happened in a largely positive manner, and there doesn't seem to be any fallouts. He's just realised that they're not what he has in mind. That's my X factor.
Okay, to defend the Jambo representation of Alan Stubbs a wee bit, I didn't think we said it was a negative thing. I think we just said it was a wee bit, it was a wee bit maverick. It's a bit different to most managers are purposely doer in press conferences, and I know it's slightly different with Stubbs because in the majority it's Hibs TV that he's given these wee nuggets to, so the majority of fans wouldn't actually see them, but it just is different. That's the only reason I personally brought it up last week, is that I actually think it's quite refreshing, quite different to give wee insights into what makes Scott Allen tick, what makes Dominic Malonga tick, and I actually think it has helped the Hibs fans to understand these boys, especially Malonga, for example. People have looked at him and thought, oh, he's lazy, and there's Stubbs acknowledging the fact he does look lazy, but I'm still playing him every week and he's contributing to the team, and it then gives him the bit of the stamp of approval that otherwise he wouldn't have got.
No, I don't think you guys were slating him at all, but I think that Stubbs wouldn't do it if he thought there was any chance of Scott Allen taking a hump about it or getting upset. I think that kind of joke, I think it's the same in a lot of work environments when you can have a joke like that with your boss within reason. I think the fact that he feels comfortable sort of pointing out little foibles that the players have, it increases fan identification with the team, but I think also it helps improve his relationship with players as well. It's
also indicative though of the reaction to that is indicative of the esteem that manager is held in amongst the audience who's receiving that information, because there are certain managers who their coat has been on a sugly peg, so to speak. Had they made jokes like that or that, you're thinking, what are you doing? Because he's in a positive situation, because he's doing so well and it is working, he does seem to be able to manage these players. You do look at that and you think, oh, that's quite refreshing, quite different. I think a big thing, the example that you gave there at Scott Robertson is a huge one, because it's almost akin to the Brendan Rodgers factor at Liverpool, where I think at times his management has been called into question and people said, are you the real deal or are you a pretender? But there are certain examples you can point to say, well, it can't possibly be a fraud, because look at who this player was 2 years ago and look at them now. That's no someone who's just making it up. To get that improvement from individual players shows that you're doing something right on the coaching ground. And as the promotional video for the season ticket shows, Alan Stubbs is on the training ground every single day, so he's the man responsible for that in the main, for that. And it almost is, this will sound ridiculous, but Jordan Henderson's improvement is not a million miles away from what you've seen with Scott Robertson, just on a different level. You are seeing a player who now is volunteering himself to take the ball in even sticky situations and driving on and somehow coming up with goals where a year ago he wasn't. It's almost a similar thing. Craig, is Alan Stubbs the biggest defining factor in Hibs season for you as well?
Yes, I think that it's all came from, like I said earlier, I think the best signing that we made was Leanne Dempster. She put in a structure, she identified quite clearly the structure that she wanted to work in. She wanted the director of football, the I don't know what George Craig's official job title is, but they identify a way that the team wants to play. They bring in a head coach who, in the past we've had managers who brought in players to fit the way that they wanted to play, not necessarily to fit the way that the player's style suited. That's why at the moment, that diamond formation really suits us. And I think it was quite refreshing as well to see that, we brought in, we had Sinclair and Kennedy on loan at the start of the season. Stubbs quickly identified that they weren't what was needed, so came to January, thanks for your services, and away you go. Whereas in the past we had that Boateng for Arsenal last season. They couldn't get near the side. Watmore couldn't get in the team. Haynes played about 3 games, got sent off and was never seen again. So I think a lot of the work has to go to Dempster, but then you've got to give credit to Stubbs. He's clearly said to the players, this is the way I want to play. I can see you fitting into this sort of style of play, and this is how we're going to go, and this is how we're going to move forward. And I think he's probably, I would maybe stick my neck on the line, but I think long term, I think he'll prove to be one of the best Hibs managers potentially in my lifetime. Okay.
Is the off-field setup, Dempster's input into this, is that being underestimated? Because people will look at it under a microscope and say, but the turmoil's still there. The fans are still divided. They're not quite sure whether HSL is the way to go. There are still other fan groups, that are kicking around. They're still unhappy with Petrie and Farmer. But I think the thing that viewpoint neglects is that is true, but it does appear to be kept at arm's length, away from the club, away from the match day atmosphere now, where it wasn't 9 months ago, it wasn't a year ago. It was bleeding onto the pitch. You could hear it in the stands as soon as anything went wrong, that everything just piled on top of each other to make this horrendous situation. Now you don't feel that, I don't think, anywhere near as much. Is essentially what I'm saying is Stubbs is thriving in this situation. He's performing brilliantly, but has he been given the pedestal to do that from by Leanne Dempster more so than she's maybe being given credit for?
Yeah, definitely. I think as you said before, when things, I think what a lot of Hibs fans now are doing is that fans that are actually going to the game, if people are saying, if you'll get fans that no matter how well Hibs are doing, folk will be peaches in the background. But then I think that other Hibs fans, instead of arguing back, are now just knowing, do you know what, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to go along on a Saturday, watch the team, watch them win, enjoy my day. If you want to sit and moan about off the field stuff that's no affecting us whatsoever, then crack on. Whereas before, you'd have people arguing, oh, I'm pro Petrie, I'm pro Farmer, oh no, I want them out. And I think that they too have distanced themselves pretty much for the club. They've given Dempster the free rein, run it how you like, and she in turn has then given Stubbs the remit to go, you know what, here's your budget, this is the way we want to play, go and get your players and turn us into a winning side. And I think he's done that, and he's done it really well.
Mikey, you've got the cast and vote, Dempster or Stubbs, and you're not allowed to say both. Who's played the bigger part in this season becoming what it has?
For me, you've got to say Stubbs. Dempster's a really close second. She obviously made the decision to bring him in, but so she had the initial impact, but he's had the greatest overall impact, and I think that Dempster's influence and impact may be felt in the seasons ahead, as the club has changed over the last 12 months and will continue to change, and hopefully some of the changes that we made, the roots will go a lot deeper and they'll stay for a lot longer, and how we approach football as a club and how we prepare young players and whatnot. But I think in the 9 months essentially that we're talking about, Alan Stubbs has had the single biggest impact. The way that he's, as the guys have touched on, gone about identifying players, identifying a system, then changing it and finding another one. So he's doing his on the job learning, but he's doing it really, really well just now. I think he's got a bit of the Midas touch about him, and he's found, or been presented, whichever way the kind of the scouting has worked and his contacts there in England, but he's found Alan free and convinced him to sign for us, and got at times the best out of him. He's not having a great time just now, but I think he's got so much out of Scott Allen. He's got convinced Dempster to allow him to sign Fraser Fivey in January, when it might have been that maybe that money's not there for him, but this guy will make a difference. He's gone and got McGeoch, he's found Dominic Malonga out of nowhere, he's made Jason Cummins go from looking like a kind of young boy at his depth to potentially a cracking striker. So he's like Connor touched on, he's turned around guys like Hanlon and Stevenson, Robertson. So everything comes from him, whether it be his coaching staff's a part of it. He brought them in. It's for me, it's him that's had the single biggest influence on what we're about, and I think he's made a difference as well with the supporters, because people like him, and it's potentially been quite a while since Hibs fans have had somebody in the dugout that they could say that they liked, and they're willing to believe what he says and take him at face value and go, you know what, I have faith that whatever he's saying, this is going to happen. If we've had a bad result, it's because of what he said. So I think that's the single biggest difference. He's got a real likeability factor on top of, at the moment, he's been a winner. They're kind of two sort of invaluable assets that he's got, and for me those make him completely invaluable to us just now. Okay, final question on this subject then, because I'm aware that during that conversation we've focused in on individuals, but both Edinburgh clubs at the moment are trying to introduce a structure and a foundation that isn't
substantially based on individuals. If Alan Stubbs chooses to move on in a year, Hibs need to keep on the upward progression that they're on. Same with Robbie Nielsen, same with Anne Budge or Leanne Dempster or whoever. It can't be based on one individual. It needs to be a constant, perpetual motion up the footballing world. With that in mind, taking that Stubbs and Dempster and that kind of thing out, what lessons have Hibs learned, or what one lesson has been learned from the last 9 months, that no matter who is at the helm of the club, no matter who is in the dugout, Hibs now need to keep at the forefront of what they're doing all the time, need to remember? Connor, is there anything for you that sticks out as just being the thing? That's what's been picked up over the last 9 months, and we just need to always have that in mind.
There's been a few. I think, like you say, having a contingency plan seems to be a really important one. I hate having to keep going back to it, but when Butcher was appointed, there weren't many fans that were that spoke out about it. I think 90% of fans thought, or more, thought this is going to be a great appointment. This is just what we need, a swift boot up the backside for a lot of them. And what a disaster that was. And I think to say the least, I think it's unprecedented how badly things went. And I think since then we realised that we can't just keep doing that. We can't just keep wiping the slate clean every year, bringing a new guy and bringing in 10 no marks. There needs to be some kind of contingency plan. There needs to be some sort of progression. So I think that's the main lesson that's been learned. Aside from that, I guess as well, just communication, from the club. I think this aloofness, as I said earlier, it was coming onto the pitch, but it was also reflecting back onto the fans, and I think that's slowly but surely changing, and that's less of a priority. But the main thing is that fans need to feel good about their club, and a lot of the stuff that's happened over the last few years has been embarrassing, not just on the pitch but just through marketing, communication, letters that have arrived and things. They've just been off, and I think that's something else that's changed as well. So positive communication skills.
Craig, are you in agreement?
Yeah, I think the communications part is a key thing, because too often we've had fans wanting answers, and then the club's PR representative David Forsyth, I think it is just wheeling out a statement that's clearly just been written by Petrie and sent down to him to put his name on it. Whereas now, like you say, you look at that. I never really got a chance to say earlier, but that marketing video, that's if I was a fan wanting a reason to go back, watching that video would take me back 100%. I felt completely, I was like, oh no, this is my club, this is a journey that I want to be on. And maybe it's suckers like me that Hibs are looking for, but I think that's a massive change for the like was mentioned earlier, the Terry Butcher's Green and White Army dropping through the door, playing on the fact that Butcher's son was in the army. So it was just you wouldn't it's stuff that children get. I think the club, and even from a social media side of things as well, are now starting to maybe treat the fans a bit more like adults now that they've got rid of the Hibernian Football Club Twitter handle as well. that was one of the big changes at the start of the season for me.
Mikey, is there anything more on the park that you think, no matter who the manager is, the club, I've potentially found something or learned some lessons that need to be carried forward from here?
Yeah, like what my answer was going to be, like the imagination and thoroughness that we now show in player identification, I think, is the single biggest difference on a playing side that we've seen from the last 5 years. Under Fenlon, it was a collection of English journeymen and guys who knew from the Irish leagues. Under Calderwood, it was a collection of English journeymen. That's all he knew. We've got a completely ragtag, unusual bunch of guys that he's found from every corner of the earth this year. But every single one of them's been brought in because they bring something to the team that was required. Like who really, even like on the most kind of local version, who knew who Martin Boyle was? Very few of us would have, but Stubbs seemingly was brought to his attention, or he knew that the guy was like a greyhound. We had little pace in the team. He brought him in. He's made a difference. He's not scored any goals, but he brings something to the team. Did we need to bring in JJ? Perhaps not, but he's brought something to the team. He's a different type of striker to the rest of them. So I think that that's going to be a legacy. That seems to it's come from George Craig as much as Stubbs, but I think that's going to be one of the great legacies that's left behind from this season, that any manager coming in the future is going to benefit from, is that we are now going to be looking at players in an entirely different fashion, and looking at the players basically in the way that modern football clubs are, and that we were just light years behind them. And I think that's going to benefit us regardless of what division we're in, regardless of who's managing us, regardless of what system he wants to play. That for me is going to have the great impact on having the type of team on the park that we want to watch again.
I think it's a great point, because it is borne out by the fact that there have been occasions this season where certain signings haven't worked out, but because there is that underlying plan, that underlying vision that everyone can see, in that situation you're now the manager is more equipped now to say, well, that one didn't work out, hands up, that was a bad one, we'll move them out now and we'll make a difference now. But you can see what we were trying to do, you can see how if that had worked it would have been great. And like we say, the couple of players that were let go, particularly in Matty Kennedy's example, not necessarily a bad player, just a player who was unnecessary with the system that Stubbs has gone with. And it's clear that there was a plan there, and he said, well, fair enough, we'll let him go and do another thing. In a situation where there wasn't a plan, when Fenlon was bringing in players, for example, he wouldn't have submitted, he wouldn't have let a player go like that, he would have played them into the ground, because otherwise it was a stick to beat him with.
Exactly.
Well, look at your track record with signings,
vindicating what you've done.
You brought that Huddy into the club, whereas because there's a broader plan, you're now in the position where managers are willing to admit their mistakes and move on more quickly, because the fans understand what they were trying at least, and can cut them a wee bit slack with that in mind. Right, very quickly, preview for the next two games. As we say, it's a busy week. Livingston on Wednesday night, and Cowdenbeath away next week. Hopefully not a 0-0 at Cowdenbeath. Are we 6 points across the board?
I think it's got to be. I think a Cowdenbeath game might be a tough one. It might be not the greatest game of football of all time, especially if the weather keeps up like this. But I think I'm pretty confident about Wednesday night. I think Livingston possibly have improved slightly since Mark Birchall's taken charge, but I do miss John McGlynn. I always love playing against this. Always against any team he manages is always quite entertaining. But I think 2-0 Wednesday night. I think JJ might get a wee chance to shine on Wednesday night. I think that might be a good opportunity for him. And then Cowdenbeath game, I reckon, as Mikey was just saying, Martin Boyle offers something a bit different. He might add a bit of sort of tenacity to the strike force, and I'll go for a 1-0 against Cowdenbeath.
I have to say, I agree with you with Livy. I've been a wee bit disappointed with them. Hearts obviously played them in the double header, and they were sticky opposition, to say the least. And I expected them to have a wee kind of bounce from Birchall taking over, but they seem to have just mastered the art of losing by slightly less. That's literally it. Now we lose by 1 goal rather than 2 or 3 under McGlynn, and we play slightly more attractive football.
Well, they were hopeless, so they were terrible early in the season, so they seem to have improved slightly, but I still think they won't be any match for us.
Okay, and in terms of Cowdenbeath, potentially Alloa, I think is maybe a massive thing. The fact that was only last week, and scrapping out that win in a horrible surface and no very good conditions, do you think that'll play a massive part? And we saw where Rangers went to Cowdenbeath, huffed and puffed, couldn't come up with anything. Hibs will be able to play with the conviction that no matter how poor the level of football is, they can come up with something, Mikey.
No, absolutely. I think we're getting a good habit now of grinding out results. We've had to do it at the start of the season in a slightly different fashion. Now we're doing it with a kind of from a position of strength, where we're going into most matches, controlling the play, dictating the pace, and I think it's a great benefit that we're starting to tick off more of these teams in the lower end that we're having a wee bit of struggle against early in the season, and beating them in a different fashion. From from Easter Road, where it can sometimes be 3-0 and 4-0. So I think it sets us up nicely. Both matches I think we'll win 2-0. 6 points, an opportunity as well to perhaps rotate some players, like we were talking the other week there about looking at starting to give guys a wee break here and there. So does David Gray need to play? Don't think so. Keith Watson's available again, get him in. does he give Collings Malonga another match when, like, you know, there was perhaps a sort of the start of a decent partnership starting to come together between them with some of the link up play, and just giving guys a run out over the 2 matches, not kind of too many wholesale changes, but we had 2 or 3 changes in each of the games. Maybe even something like giving Cherny a game, possibly in goals. Not through any fault of Oxley. He's like, you know, he maybe looked a bit ropey at the weekend, but it was another clean sheet. And we've got the second best defensive record in the league, so we can't really beat him too much with a stick. But it might be that Cherny just get him into a game, so like if something happens with Oxley, if he gets sent off or injured, he's not completely cold. But yeah, I think I see 2 relatively straightforward victories. 2-0 both games for me.
Craig, 6 points for you, mate.
Aye, 6 points. But I think the key out of this game, well, obviously the key of the 2 games is to get the results and get the points, but, you know, as has been said already, a wee bit of squad rotation. You know, maybe, you know, Scott Allen's went off the boil a wee bit in the last couple of weeks. Sam Stanton came on at the weekend and showed, you know, that when he's needed, he's ready. You know, so let's maybe give him the chance to get the full 90 under his belt. Maybe, you know, maybe even if we give McGeoch or even Robertson a rest, maybe get one of the boys for the under 20s team in. Scott Martin's been raved about by quite a lot for the Hibs side of things.
What's wrong with Danny Handlin,
Or our club captain Liam Gregg.
Yeah, of course.
Like, you know, the guys like him need to come back in and stay match sharp as well. So it's important that Jordan Forster as well needs game time. He's so rusty, so it's important to pick the right guys for the right games, and make sure everyone gets a few minutes, I think, before we kind of go into this really hectic time. We're probably going to have to rely on the fringe players a bit more.
On the subject of Liam Craig, I have to say that was arguably my favourite moment of the game of the weekend. He was so raging that keeper's save was acknowledged, because to be fair, it was a good finish, and it was an amazing save from Billy Bald.
He was probably privately gutted as well. He got denied the save.
I've never seen someone quite so raging about the award of a bye kick before. It was pretty good.
He's a passionate guy.
And for anyone wondering, given that there's no Hearts involvement midweek, I will be in attendance at Easter Road on Wednesday, so if you encounter me, please be kind. Remember, I am, like Mikey is Jambo's kickback favourite, I'm Hibs.net favourite at the moment. Whether I'll stay that way after
it's
this
a very
show.
shallow pool that you've swam to the top of.
So please be kind. I am making the effort as a supporter of the opposition to go along for the purposes of this show, and just to slightly lend, I'll even go as far as saying to lend my moral support for this run in. I would rather see Hibs go up than Rangers, so I will be there. I'm not convinced I'm going to be cheering goals, but I'll be a neutral at the game, shall we say.
As long as you're not on the away end waving Union Jacks and singing about Rudy Scatchell.
What's Scott like,
No, I'm definitely not. I'm in the home end and I'm comfortable there.
You'll be in the famous 5 after your
no, that's true. Craig rescinded my invite to sit with him in the famous 5. So okay, let's round up then. Stay in touch with us during the week on social networking. We are Monday Night Fitba, Fitba on Facebook. You can find us just in the search bar at the top there, or we're at MN Fitba on Twitter. Get us added, stay in touch. If you want to appear on the show, if you think you can do anything for us, we also have a rather fledgling blog on the go. If anyone is an aspiring writer, then get in touch with us. We would love for you to get involved and help us out in any way that you can. Other than that, are we happy with that, guys? Is that enough of a counterpoint from last week? As Hibbies, have you been able to get everything that you wanted off your chest?
No, I think it was good to do. I think we are, like as I said, we are at a sort of tipping point in the season where we're looking ahead. There's so much that could happen. There's so much that is going to happen. It's a real exciting time. So I think it was good to spend a wee bit extra time just going over the Hibbies and their progress.
It's boring being a Hearts fan just now, you know.
There is that
excitement coming for this side at least.
There is that, but I'm sure however many games it takes to win the title, though, there'll be no concern about lack of excitement when that's done and dusted and we know it's happening. But yeah, like you say, there's absolutely loads to talk about. It's been nice to just kind of wipe the slate clean with both clubs, go through absolutely everything, so that over the next few weeks, which are going to be hugely busy, we can just keep both teams on the same show but covering everything, because we've got giving ourselves this starting platform. Perfect. Right, let's wrap up there. Thank you very much for staying tuned with us on another marathon episode of Monday Night Football, but for good reason. We hope that all you Hibbies enjoyed that and stay tuned with us. As we say, we have now got the panel of Hibbies involved here, the three guys who will kind of rotate as we go, but this show will from now on be as balanced as humanly possible. And we hope that you will stick with us, because I do really think that we will offer something different. We have offered something different. We'll continue to do that, and I think we'll go from strength to strength over the next few months, as hopefully both clubs do exactly the same. Thank you for staying tuned to Monday Night Football on Radio Saltire. Have a good week. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.